What's up, witches? If you're new to my channel, welcome to the slow zone. I'm going to try not to make it too slow today. I hope you like what you see, and if you're a regular on my channel, welcome to my first ever video response hashtag video. This is a response to my disheveled decks hashtag by Candy Soul and Soil channel. So off we go. I got a stack here. Like I said, I'm going to try not to make it too long, but we'll see how that goes. And I'm not going to do anything in a particular order, except that I'm starting with my most disheveled deck because I wouldn't be able to wait to get to it. Here is, I've got a combination of Tarot and Oracle, and I'm not going to do any particular order. I'm just going to grab decks. This is my oldest, not really my oldest deck, but it is certainly my most disheveled. I mean, look at this. This deck I received as a gift in 1990 and read with it through my entire, I mean, this is the facing card. Look at this. It's just creased and, the box is long gone. But I read with this through my entire, professional reading career. This was my mainstay, my go-to. This, of course, is the Hanson Roberts. And I mean, just look at the backs of them. They're worn, they're grungy, they've got the thumb, it's a well-lived-in deck, and there is no faking that, I have a new copy of it, which I have used, but when I got the new copy and read with it for the first time, it just didn't have the same magic that this one does. So, and I will say that I don't reach for this one very often. I feel like when I retired from running the business, this deck kind of got retired as well. One of the reasons is because over the years, these cards got some very specific meanings, and sometimes some kind of narrow meanings associated with them. And so I found, especially when I would do like Ren fairs or psychic fairs, that they would start to go stale after a while because I would say the same thing over and over again. And that's the problem with using like a well-beloved deck, is sometimes you can get into a rut with particular cards. But the reason I stuck with those meanings is because they were right every time. So for instance, like the Page of Pentacles being specifically structured learning, taking a class, something beyond just reading a book. The Knight of Pentacles was specifically taking on new skills as far as handling resources. The let me see if I can find another one here. She certainly came across as just a very good friend and a confidant and sometimes a counselor, although King of Wands was my card for professional consult of some sort. And this Knight of Wands, somebody moving in, so change of residence, somebody moving in, somebody moving out was number one. Change within the residence, so change of residence was number one, change within the residence number two, taking a trip number three. And I mean, it was always just right on. So this is my most beloved and most used deck, and there's a lot of history there. So that's my number one, the Hanson Roberts. Now, my number two is the deck that I would go to when I was doing fairs and things, and that one started getting stale. When I felt like I wasn't running from my intuition any longer, I was just running from my brain, I would go to this deck, and this is my Robin Wood. I can kind of tell my most disheveled decks just by looking at the boxes, particularly in the earlier days when tuck box was the standard. and those boxes fell apart so fast. That's why there is no box for the Hanson Roberts. There is no box for the Robin Wood. And I'm sad that I didn't think of doing the tape thing with them then, because I like to preserve the whole thing. But you can see, you know, this one's got some grunge to it too. The borders are kind of junky looking. This deck has a distinctly different voice from the Hanson Roberts. I mean, it is still generally the same, but like when I get to the quartz, there were some nuances and different things, which is why I don't like pip decks. I like decks that have the images, because they do, each of the images really does have its own story to tell and its own message to give. So this is my number 2 to shove. I mean, if you just look at the edges of them, you can see grunge. Again, I really wish I still had the box for this one. So it's so hard for me not to launch into a deck review. And, you know, so I'm going to do my best to stay on topic here, because I do have so many to get through. Here's another one. And like I said, I'm grabbing the ones with that are in bags first, because these are the ones that I've had the longest and the boxes are gone. So that tells me. This is the Tarot of the Old Path. I almost forgot the name. And, you know, there's another hashtag going around about my forgotten decks, and this is one of them, because because it's in a bag, and when I look at my collection, I can't see it. They're stacked in a box. I just forget about it, but it's got the layer of grunge too. This is a very, I won't say just witchy or pagan deck, but like a Wiccan deck. It definitely follows the old path, and you can see that illustrated here in the death card, which is called the Close. And you see this cycle, you know, death to birth, and through that cycle. The judgment card is called Karma here. So we do have new stories to tell in this deck. I want to find one of my favorite cards that just felt this one. This felt like I know her. You know, she was, when I first went through this deck, this one jumped out at me. And I love she has a very Eastern European look to it, which is half of my DNA. So that could be one of the reasons. Still an absolutely gorgeous deck, and one of the ones that I wore out in the early days. These are decks when I was starting my tarot journey, particularly like the Old Path, where I did readings for myself. So they were in heavy rotation. Let's go to a couple oracles. You know what? I'm going to do the oracles second. I did separate the stacks, and I'm going to stick with that. The Crowley Thoth. Now we're into the ones that still have boxes, but the boxes barely made it into me starting to do my tape deal. This one, as you can see, this little flappy thing on this side is gone. Some of them, they were torn completely off, and I taped them back on, but you can see by the grunge on the box just how old and how used these decks have been. This one doesn't have quite as much wear, but it did get some heavy duty stuff. And you know, I've been seeing some videos on this deck recently that are making me want to go back to them, because there's so much of the imagery that I don't remember, that feels very new to me, because it has been a while. And Pip deck, though it is a Thoth deck, so it does have a keyword on each, and that's a good thing. So yeah, I think I'm gonna be heading back into the Crowley Thoth waters soon. There's the backs. Those, you know, you can look up. We'll see if I tag all these. I probably will. I have my unboxings of all these decks that, yes, I will probably tag for you below. This one's really disheveled, and I apologize, because there are at least several of these decks that are out of print. And I do believe this is one of them. Here's another one. The same little flappy thing is missing on this one. And this is one of the ones where I think it was torn completely off and I taped it back on. But even with the tape treatment, this box is like falling apart. So the Merlin Tarot, and I have to tell a little cautionary tale with this because I am not fully the reason this deck is disheveled. Back in the early 90s, I can't remember, I think it was up in Bay Village where I used to do a Ren fair. And I was there doing readings, and some young pagans came and were hanging out, and it was, you know, the early days of the internet. And I met some people, and you know, we were in chat rooms or bulletin boards, or I think it was just bulletin boards in those days. And this one young man asked if he could borrow this deck. And being early days for me, I said sure. And I want it back. I told him specifically, I do want it back. I will let you borrow it for a while. So he had it, I don't know, a few weeks, a month. And I was like, okay, you've had time to get to know the deck. I would like it back now. And I asked for him to give it back to me. And he didn't, and he didn't, and he didn't, and he didn't. And I kept asking and asking and asking. And I finally just said, you know, the deal you made was you may borrow it and give it back. And it is really super bad, a really bad idea to go back on your word, period, but especially when you've given your word to a priestess of the craft. You know, just don't do it, bud. And he did send it back to me finally. Pip deck, this deck is a system all its own. Beasts, birds, as you can see, Innocent is the devil card. Let's see, beasts, birds, birds. I'm trying to get the 4 suits here. We could do this an easier way, probably. No, we can't. All right, these are 2 cards that talk about this whole structure of this deck. All right, beasts, birds. I have to relax because I'm getting fishes, because I don't want to bore you. And serpents. Beasts, birds, fishes, and serpents. But yeah, it's, you know, it certainly had some wear when I let him borrow it. It certainly had more when I got it back from him. And thank the gods I got it back, because I do love this deck and it's mine. All right. Next up, I'm trying to think of who came first in this order, and I'm not sure. But here's the Daughters of the Moon, and you can see, you know, this box is hashed. Being the second round deck that was ever published. First one being the Mother Piece. And the first, you know, goddess deck. I'm trying to remember between this and the Old Path. I seem to think the Old Path came first as far as being in my collection. And this is where, man, oh man, I sure wish I had written down someplace when I started buying decks and when I got them, because I would love to know what order I got them in. But this is, I do believe this is still in print by Fiona Morgan. Reprint, I think this might have been the first iteration of the deck. Not sure, but it is an early one at any rate. And I've had 2 books because I bought the first book, and then I used to take decks to Mother Drum every month when I was doing my Dance, Drum, and Chant for Women public women's ritual group. And I would take several decks, and it's like you can go over and grab a card and do a reading for yourself. And somebody stole my Daughters of the Moon book, so, you know, they're dealing with that karma. And I had to buy another book. Thank God it was still available. So this is one of my disheveled decks. Well loved, much beloved. And you know, there's also a hashtag of irreplaceable decks. Did I mention that? And a lot of these qualify for that simply because they're out of print. All right. This one, I think, was an earlier one. This is The Witch's Tarot by Ellen Cannon Reed and Martin Cannon in this flip open box, kind of sideways tuck box. This was the first deck I ever saw that had pentagrams on it. You know, this alone sold me on this deck and made me want it, but look at the edges. You can certainly see. And I did lots and lots and lots of reading from this deck for myself. Another obviously very pagan, witchy deck. So, you know, are you catching a theme here? Aside from the Hanson Roberts and the Robin Wood, we've got the Old Path, we've got Daughters of the Moon, Merlin, Witches Tarot, all of these very witchy pagan stepping outside of the Abrahamic. However, this deck is based in the Kabbalah. And you might see on, do they have them? Okay, yeah. On the majors, or at least some of them, yeah, okay. On the majors, you notice that there are spheres. Like here's one, and here's one. So we could kind of do this, you know, and ooh, I never thought of putting them together. But what this shows is that these 22 major arcana actually are pathways between the Sephiroth of the Kabbalah. And there's a book called The Witch's Kabbalah. The book that goes with this is The Witch's Tarot, which is a bigger book. And then there's The Witch's Kabbalah, which relates the Kabbalah to the charge of the goddess and makes it accessible and usable to pagans. And pagans and witches are nothing if not resourceful and adaptable. So there's Witches Tarot. Then we have Neck and Neck. Which came first? I kind of think the Sacred Rose came first. Again, you know, check the box, man. So here's the third one, that particularly this flap on this side is gone. What a hell. And I see that I need to put another piece of tape in here. I mean, look at how it's falling apart. So yeah, I will tape that one up too. This deck too got shit tons of airtime. There's a face card. Daily readings. So there was a time in the very early 90s, and I'm talking about actually 1990 on out, where I was in college. I had just at 32 had quit my job and went to college. And so my days, especially in the summer, you know, nothing going on, but I think apart from 2 semesters, I went part-time the rest of the time, and I would spend hours and hours and hours every day just doing readings for myself, doing readings on particular events that were going on. This is a beautiful deck. I had a friend that called this the White Eyes deck. Let me see if I can find a very good example of that. And that one's not, that one actually has eyeballs, but like a lot of these other figures, sorry, I'm holding it in an angle. Come on, show me the whites of her eyes. Yep, there we go. The white eyes. So, and this deck, I also remember, this was one of the lookup decks. I would look up every card. So there were many years where I, you know, and decks that I used that I just never internalized intuitively, and would just look up the cards, and they were so accurate from those descriptions that, you know, and this is one of those things where everybody that's a reader knows that it can be very difficult to read for yourself because we have blind spots. And if we're looking, you know, please clue me in on this blind spot, and you're doing a reading, and that blind spot can manifest as just this card makes no sense to me. You look it up and you just can't plug it in to what's going on in your life, and that's because it's a blind spot, so it can be very difficult. And I find having decks that I don't internalize, which also makes it easier to manipulate the information and interpret, according to my wishes. It's great to have decks that you just go to the book with and just take that as, gospel. I'm going to set this in a different place so I remember to fix the box. Okay, now let's go to Oracle decks. And I am zipping through these. I thought this was going to be a horribly long video. What was I? Okay, I was just going to say something here and I short-circuited myself. I'm not done with Tarot. Let's focus, Luna. I don't remember. At any rate, here is the Cosmic. I did forget one. Uh-oh. All right, I'm going to let you look at the cover of that while I go grab. All right. So here is Norbert Losch's The Cosmic Tarot. It's so funny because this is taking me back to the days when I was coveting decks, being a student in particular, not working. It was like I would save up. I would go to this little shop in Akron called the Acorn Grows. Fantastic little shop. And look at their decks, and I would have ones picked out, I want this one, I want this one, I want this one, and actually save money to get a deck. Can you imagine? So this one's got the Grunge Factor 2. This is a deck that was another great lookup deck for me, but then became a really great intuitive deck as well. This is the one that's got the celebrity faces and images. My unboxing of this deck, I went and actually found as many images as I could, and somebody else had done like all the legwork for me, but I did include those images in the video so you could see. So the Norbert Losch, my first really kind of dark deck, I would say. This has some intense energies to it, and an excellent and worthy deck to have in the collection. Now, the Grandpappy, the Voyager Tarot. This deck was so expensive when I bought it. I think it was, sorry, I'm going to light my charcoal. I think it was like, $35 or something, which was, hella expensive back in the day. Oh, I know what I was going to say before. You're not seeing the Waite Smith deck here because I do not have my original copy. The first deck I ever had, I stole from my brother-in-law, and I'm trying to figure out what happened to it because I can't imagine that I gave it away, but it is a possibility that, like, when I got the Hanson Roberts, I went, okay, I don't need another deck. Because I remember when my ex-husband got me the Hanson Roberts as a birthday present, and I remember thinking, I already have a tarot deck. Why do I need a second tarot deck? But I did. And so I'm thinking it's possible that I handed it along. It's also possible that somebody ganked it from me. Anyway, that's why that deck is not here. But here's the Voyager Tarot. Like I said, I saved, $35. Astronomical. And, I've got this box taped up. You can see it's pretty banged up. But the real evidence is here. Look at the book is just falling to bits. This is another deck that I did a lot of looking up with because the descriptions of the cards, look at, I still have this. So here's how we used to do it, you guys. Merrill West Publishing, Voyager Tarot. And you would send this in, a multimedia symbology. Enjoy this unique opportunity to practice the symbolic way to self-realization. And you have, yes, I am interested in poster-sized photographic print of Voyager cards, home study correspondence course. Correspondence course, you'd get it in the mail. Videotape cassette on uses of Voyager deck. audio cassette description of cards. So this is tape, you guys. Reading consultation, workshops and classes, free descriptive catalog of Voyager services, and you give them your name and address, and they'd send you all this stuff in the snail mail. In the snail mail. Didn't even have email then, gang. All right. But you see how that book is falling apart. But the reason that the book is falling apart is because when you look up the meanings for these cards, the description mentions every single element in this collage. So you can imagine there are cards where I have read the meaning and they've mentioned an element in there and I cannot find it on the card. They're so skillfully done, and then we have the keywords too. And this is one of those decks where, I love this card, one of those decks where I've laid them out in the 3x3 grid, and they literally make like sentences. The messages are so clear. Look at that. There's the Empress. There's the Star. Just gorgeous, gorgeous cards. This is still absolutely available. I'm not sure if this is first edition. Let me see if I can find that out. Falling Apart, 1986. And that's all it has is 1986. So pretty sure this is a first edition. And wow, am I so happy to still have it in my collection. And the original Waite Smith deck that I had, whether I lost that or gave it away, that is the only deck that has ever left my collection on purpose. I had another one that someone gave to me, and then someone asked to borrow it, and I didn't get it back. And I think that it might have been the person that I thought they gave it to me, but they actually lent it to me, so I don't know. And I don't think that's replaceable. But let's put you down in the bottom there. Here's my ratty, disheveled, look at the book. It's just fallen to bits. Okay, now we're done with the tarot. So let's go back to bags. No, let's go here. This is absolutely the first Oracle deck that I ever owned. I had at the time the Waite Smith deck that I swiped, and this little witchy store opened up in Kent, and I went down. You'll hear this story if you go to my unboxing of this. Well, it came from, I did a meditation in a past life vision and saw myself drawing a grid in the sand with symbols and then letting a snake go that would go across the grid, and then I would read the trails. And I went to this shop, saw this deck. I've always been very drawn to Egyptian stuff, and I turned it over and it showed the cards laid out in the same grid in sand. So I snatched it. This is the Way of Cartouche. And I did so many readings with this deck back in the early times, and I'd have to go look at my old journals and stuff to see if I wrote things down. But it got a lot of, it was in heavy rotation as well. You can see I've got some cards that have big creases in them, and just super yellowed and grungy. They were really pristine white when I first got them. And an excellent deck. Okay, I'm sorry, I got to put these right way up. I don't know what's going on. Sometimes, one of the things I do, if I'm doing a reading for myself late at night, which is frequently, it seems to be when I do them, and both little flaps on this box are just gone. And even though it's taped up, it's still kind of falling apart, so I might have to do a little more to save this box. But when I do readings for myself late at night, and I want to you know, something was really hitting me and I want to look at it again the next day in daytime head, I will take the reading, put it in order, and put it face to. So, you know, if the cards are here and here's the face of them, I will put it the other way. So if I forget and pull out the deck, it'll be, oh yeah, this was a reading, and I can put the cards out and look at them again. So Way of Cartouche, don't know if this is still available. Then we have probably the second Oracle deck that I got, and this is the Medicine Cards by Jamie Sams. Again, when you know, I think about those innocent days when I only had a few decks. So, you know, of course I use them a lot. These are definitely have some wear. I ended up with like 3 copies of this deck. This is the first, I think the first edition, and subsequent editions they added cards. So I have, I think this one was 40. Pretty sure. And then, wait, there's 42, bat, 43. So I think this one, first one was 44, hummingbird. And then they added cards, and you know, this is a stock that's matte-ish. And then they put out new versions where the colors were a little more bold, and they seem to be, hold on one second. So when I first got this, it was a hardback book, and it came in a big tuck box, you know, with the cardboard inserts and stuff. So I ditched that box right away, and then you just had the cards. Then subsequent editions, also hardback book, but the cards themselves were in a box. Jamie Sams and David Carson. So I'm just trying to see, and yeah, you can see the difference. Matte, this super shiny stock, which I'm not that crazy about. And both versions have the blank cards in them. And as interesting as these arrays of kind of ornaments are on the medicine shield here, they have no meaning. It makes me sad. I actually went through once and sorted them to, you know, all the cards that have this one on it, and is there anything in common? And no, there isn't. So that was like my first experience of, if you're going to go to the trouble, you know, why make it throwaway? Why not make it mean something? 1988, 1999. So this probably was a first edition, and this a second edition. And yeah, see, there's not a book there. Wait a minute. But this one too, you know, this one's got the grunge going on too, because I did use it a lot. 35, I'm just looking for the highest number. Why? I'm not sure. Oh, I think what I did was sort them out. Who cares? 46, 52. So this might have been 52 cards. Either way, I will put the unboxings for this down below, and you can get more information about it that way. Like I said, it's just so hard not to go into review mode, but an excellent deck to have. And then I have this box fell apart too. This was a gift deck. This is Froud's Fairies and Fairies Oracle. And see, okay, so the last time I had this deck out, I apparently did a reading, and I put the reading here so I could review it. And I'm not going to do that now. And I'm going to shuffle it back in because time has gone by. And will that reading mean something to me now? Who knows? But this was a gift from my sister-in-law, Robin. And one of the most alive decks that I have ever had experience with. You can see the wear that's on them. A Beltane one time where we were outside doing a very quick little ceremony when my son was 6 and didn't want anything to do with ceremony, but we were giving him a little blessing, and stood there, did the little blessing. He was very impatient, and then I was shuffling and said, okay, Lord Lady, anybody want to talk to us? What do you have to say? And I shuffled, I closed my eyes, shuffled, and heard things fly out and hit the ground, and this is what it looked like. Himself and the Bright Mother. The holy couple showed up on Beltane to say hello. So this deck, I mean, it's a wonderful, you can see just the cards are bent and creasy, and they've been, I'm sure, anointed with wine and beer and all kinds of other celebratory things. But this one, like I said, an alive deck, this is another deck that I do not have the meanings internalized. And when I use it, I close my eyes and I cut shuffle. And I say, who wants to talk to me? And I just keep shuffling until they shoot out of the deck. Sometimes I shuffle and shuffle and shuffle, and nothing flies out. But then I've gone back and looked through the deck, and a card has managed to turn itself wrong way around, face up. So it's alive. And this was the one that kind of really solidified the whole gift deck thing in my head, and made me start thinking about why gift decks work so wonderfully. And it's because of that synchronicity principle. Somebody else is choosing for you based on their love for you, and that they want you to be happy and give you a gift. And maybe they're seeing something in you that you don't recognize, that deck really connects to. So I love it. Anyhow, I'm just giving a celebratory fire of Azrael to all these amazing decks that I love so well. Okay, next up is the Sci Cards. This was a super early one too. I want to say that I might have even had these before I had my Hanson Roberts. It was certainly around the same time. Note the frickin' hashed box. And I know that I believe these are still available, but they look a little different now. And again, here's this kind of matte cardstock. This is why I like that early US Games, what I consider normal cardstock, like playing cards. They're matte, they're easy to shuffle. It's really easy to see the images. The thing that I didn't know with this deck when I first had it, and this was another kind of look things up, but this was another deck when I would lay them out in the 3x3 grid, complete messages. Like when I was asking about when I was pregnant and wanting to have a home birth and not knowing where to find the resources or how to do that. And I asked if this was something I should be doing, and it said, mother, father, yes, home birth now. So yeah, what a deck. But now, having been kind of introduced into the cartomantic style and the Lenormand and Kipper style cards, this deck is reading very differently to me now. And I'm going to start pulling it out more and practicing in that cartomantic way, because that's what it's for. That's the way you're supposed to do it. Cards sort of modify other cards. This was 1989. And yes, this is a first edition. So every once in a while, I will look up something and see what people are asking for it and go, whew, too bad I'm not selling. Then we have Morgan's Tarot in its beat up box. And we've got, again, the little flappies missing here because it's been opened and closed so many times. This is in with the Oracle decks because it is not actually a tarot deck. There's no structure to it whatsoever. There are, how many cards now? Let's see. 88 cards. has no division of major and minor or any suits or any kind of structure or anything whatsoever. There's another deck out now that I think is indie that has the same, it's got this border and this border, the same kind of setup, but I do not believe it's by this author. So there's a lineage. You mean tomato, potato, eggplant. Look at that. And here's the thing, since there's no structure and there's no numbers, and the book is not alphabetized, so if you want to look up the cards, it's a long walk. So this is a great deck that really does push you out of your standard context of tarot and into using your intuitive gifts. Look at these. I mean, just what a fabulous deck. I use these on my live stream with all of my wackiest decks because it is wacky, man. How can you say it's not, you know? Look at this, the hourglass on its side, wait. Orders, and it says, await further orders, await for, it just says await further orders all the way down there. There's nothing you can do. Awake. The field of the Lord. Look at that, a pram for a baby and a wheelchair. Then we have insignificant change, the dream. Ooh! I mean, just amazing, amazing deck. And yes, this is a deck that I reach for when I need my brain to be shaken up and I really need to hook into my intuition and get outside of any of my calcified ideas of, you know, any tarot deck. And then we have, is this the last one I have? Yes, it is. Okay. Now we have Symbolon. And this deck, I want to say, looks more hashed than it actually is. This is a deck that the box fell apart like immediately. This is an A.G. Muller deck. And it took me a while to get this deck. I remember ordering it and ordering it and ordering it. This is when I was working for a company that had a shop and sold decks. And so I got them at cost. And I would place an order. And it was like, you know, here's the decks I'm ordering personally. And then I would just pay straight up for them. It has been edged in gold. And it edged very unevenly because the edges were pretty soft. You know, when you use a deck a lot, like that Witch's Tarot, you can see the black was, the edges get softened, and so they absorb the ink a lot more. I made a mess of edging this deck because I used a paint pen, and since it was gold borders on both sides, I just sort of did it as a block, and it sort of made a mess, but I don't really care. So yeah, this is a bit of a hash deck. This is one of those decks that it just is a standalone. There's no other deck like it. It is, see, they kind of stuck together because of using that paint marker. You can see, look at that. So part of the reason this is disheveled is because I fucked up edging it. It was a deck modification gone wrong. But this deck, you can see we've got signs, you know, each thing is an archetype. And I think, you know, I might go further by putting the title of each of these cards on it. But I'm never not going to use the book with this deck because it actually tells you that you can do a 1-card pull, or the standard reading is 3 cards. And for every card that you look up, it will say A as a single or the first card, which is the problem. So if you do a 3-card, this one is the problem, B is the way through the problem, and C is the outcome. And there's a very different meaning for each of those positions. So this is one of those decks I've never not used the book. Also, there is a book available as a PDF that is a much expanded resource. and I am ashamed to say that I bought it twice because I forgot that I bought it the first time. So I have 2 copies of it. At any rate, there's the Symbolon, and there is the end of my disheveled decks hashtag. I hope that was at least entertaining for you. It is nice to go down memory lane and go back to my, my roots here and remember those early days and how wonderful it was learning and exploring and having the world of intuition kind of reveal itself to me. Those early readings, if you can remember back when you first got into tarot or oracle, and particularly when you got your first deck that that really connected, and you think about doing readings that just blew your fucking mind, with the Froude's Fairies deck. That is a deck that I would read, not just the divinatory meanings in reverse, but there's a whole description at the beginning. I would read through that description, and in there would be like specifically, exactly my situation, exactly the things I wanted to hear. Sometimes like a verbatim thing that I had said about, I asked a question about this, and in the description would be the exact thing that I said. So, decks like that that just confirm and show to you initially, and then confirm as well, that intuition is a real thing, that these readings are, that magic is real. That's the only thing I can say. Magic is real. So anyway, again, I hope that you liked that. And thanks again to Candy Soul and Soil for the hashtag. She said, please let me know when you do a VR because I'd like to see your response. So here's my response to you. And thank you so much for that hashtag that got me into doing my first hashtag ever. All right, you guys, thanks for being here and hanging out with me. I will see you on another unboxing and or a live stream or ritual. Until then, this is Luna. Blessed be.